Grief and regret do not give man time to think, so in order to keep him ignorant, he must be imprisoned in grief. This statement of Friedrich Nietzsche does not really have an expiration date. When a person is in a state of fear and survival, his concentration decreases, and he feels that the rest of the questions in his life are not necessary. He says to himself, "For now, I just have to solve my problem." Of course, this is completely normal, but an important question is, why is a person afraid of sadness today? What is this sadness that Nietzsche is talking about? Why do you have to keep people sad in order to subjugate them? Hello, everyone. I wish you a good heart and a beautiful life. I'm Lena, and together we will travel to the inner world and walk the path of awareness. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of my latest videos. Thank you so much for supporting me and cheering me up with your kind heart. In the psychology of existentialism, we have two types of pain: meaningless grief and meaningful suffering. The book Man in Search of Meaning says an important thing about this type of pain. Mr. Viktor Frankl says, "If two identical brothers are beaten in the worst way for 3 years, and the first one is told that his beating is part of a sporting exercise, and the second one is not given any reason for being beaten, the first brother, after 3 years, he will probably become a strong and confident athlete, and the second brother will probably turn into a human full of complexes and resentments. So this proves that we have two types of grief and pain." But the next question is, how can you control people with unwarranted sadness? Why do thinkers and philosophers like Noam Chomsky in his book Media Control refer to this new type of slavery so much? Why it warns that we need to be careful about the happiness that the media gives us, and proves why this kind of happiness can be worse than depression. Today we will examine these questions from a social and psychological perspective. Questions that affect the fate of each and every one of us human beings. We can deceive ourselves and say that no, I don't care, but we know that if someone wants to pierce the ship of life and wants to justify that this is for me, then I can do whatever I want. It will cause harm to all of us. In modern times, perhaps no one has talked as much about the control of public opinion and propaganda as Noam Chomsky. Chomsky says, "The media can always keep people involved in this issue by creating an atmosphere of fear and anxiety." He says, "The more people are bombarded with negative and sad news, the more they will sink into a state of fear and survival and will not think of playing. The bottom line is that they either involve people in the form of meaningless grief or directly." A clear historical example of this was the Soviet regime, and especially Stalin, which created an atmosphere full of fear, betrayal, and economic suffering, and the people were only thinking about survival and could control them so easily. This strategy is pretty straightforward and basic, but even more dangerous is selling happiness. The man-made happiness of these meaningless dreamers, which deceive 90% of the population, that this is called the power of the media empire in the modern world. That is, it has nothing to do with any particular country or culture. Today, power is in the hands of this beautiful and deceptive snake, who can easily change your perspective on something you disagree with by constantly buzzing in your brain, who has the power to ruin a person's reputation overnight. It's pretty obvious, no. Let's put aside the conspiracy theory and the Illuminati and these issues. 80% of our tastes are according to the customs of dress and the customs of society. The movies we watch, the songs we listen to, the words we say, and the comparisons we make, the way we dress, and even our hairstyles are influenced by others. When Peaky Blinders aired, many people became smokers because of Thomas Shelby's character in the movie. It's very scary, but it's not the scary part of the story. It's the dark part of it, that this powerful empire can give us the definition of happiness, saying, if you are what we say, you are happy, not the way you want it to be. This is the more important deception that is even more dangerous than unexplained sadness. And now we prove that the happiness they say is the darkest kind of depression. Eric Fromm say that our view of life is twofold, to be and to have. Having is based on possession, control, and multiplication. People who live with this attitude value an identity on what they have, such as wealth, their status in the eyes of others, or even knowledge. These people introduce themselves with their possessions, and because their identity is dependent on these possessions, they are always dependent on those things and feel insecure, because they're always afraid that someone will come and steal their identity, because their identity is not special. If someone like them has a house, a car, and a place, it will be the same as them, and it is as if this person did not exist at all. This type of attitude is also called consumerism today. Such people put in a lot of effort, and their goal is more important than anything else. That is, they are willing to achieve their goal by any means possible, because it is possible, not to specify any moral value for themselves. They always run and try and work and work and work until the end of the same money that they earned with hard work, spend things and influence people whose presence or absence has had no effect on their lives. Now, why do we say this? This is you, and this is also the media's definition of happiness. Yes, the media tells us that we should be happy like this. Eric Fromm's interpretation of this point of view is very, very beautiful and leads us to a better understanding of this artificial happiness that is dictated to us. This modern happiness sees everything, unfortunately, in money and wealth. People respect each other based on their status and wealth. And you know what the bad news is? If you fall a little behind, you will quickly be out of the competition, and someone else will take your place. That's why trends are changing every day. Singers have become disposable. Tastes change with trends, and you don't see anyone who is so effective in the long run, because the fashion industry needs more sales, and clothes are sewn in hungry countries that work for $1 a day. No, let's not blame everything on money. All the blame is not on the money. Money only reveals and accentuates its intrinsic and hidden identity. If a person is generous, he becomes more generous, and if he is evil, he now has more money to do evil things. It's a power story, and the problem is that that's always the power game. Churchill used to say, "Anyone who tastes power only once will be drunk and intoxicated by it for the rest of his life." And the players in this field of play are people from all over the world who can get along with each other. But if these nonsensical indoctrination allows, then you will realize that unwarranted sadness, such as poverty, injustice, discrimination, feelings of shame, and many other things, it can be a reason for control. Another reason for this is the empty happiness in which only ownership perspective is defined. That be fashionable, be trending, to spend whatever money you earn on the most up-to-date things, boast to others with your clothes, not with your knowledge and understanding. And that's how you move forward. Now the question is, how do I get out of this cycle? This is where we encounter the second attitude, being. Unlike the previous one, this perspective does not focus on what we have, but on what we become. This perspective cares about human experiences, personal growth, and living a right and meaningful life. In being, the value of identity is not determined by what we have, but by our own existential value and the perception and consciousness that we have. What is important in being is the knowledge we have of ourselves. Being is more about us, and having is more about the outside. And because of this, self-loathing has become very much in society, especially between the young people. A society that does not define a correct identity for them, and whose main focus is on to have. We don't mean to go and live in a cave and consider it an honor. No, we have to use our achievements. We must strive to obtain them and create our own identity. These are necessary conditions, but they are not sufficient conditions. Sufficient condition comes from within, and according to Erich Fromm and many great psychologists, true happiness, the place between the balance of these two attitudes of sadness and unhappiness, has always had a more important place for human beings than happiness, and this has been remembered in our genetics from our ancestors, where the threat of danger to the old humans could have cost them their lives. And that is why it is always 6 or 7 times more important than happiness. Little by little, as humans discovered fire and cities were built, this sense of danger became less, but that genetic code has been there within us for millions of years. And that is why even modern humans are more affected by sadness than by happiness. According to research, scientists have observed that the feeling of sadness stays within us 4 times longer than happiness and has a greater effect, which proves the same idea of risk aversion of ancient humans, and that is why today when humans are involved with sadness, it is easier to control it. Although in some places, as we said, it is by giving false hopes and happiness dramatically, they are completing this two-sided puzzle. It was there that Nietzsche said, "Hope is the worst thing because it prolongs the suffering of man, which is meant here, the same false hope." the same empty happiness. Unfortunately, 90% of our hopes today are fabricated and injected. It can be said that the best solution is that, in the first step, we should put aside that unwarranted sadness, many of which come from the prejudices and traditions of the past, and then we should not be deceived by the glamour of today's happiness, and instead of ownership attitude, we should incline towards being. We should see life as it really is and fight against the ignorance and superstition of those around us. This is the only way that every human being can do in the first step. Do you know of any other solution that can be solved by thinking and talking logically? My friends, remember that our greatest joys are often intertwined with our deepest sorrows. I hope this part has helped your life a little. You are invited to grow. Just remember, every great journey begins with a small step. Thank you for being with me on this journey today. If you liked the video, click the like button and follow our videos. Stay tuned for my new videos, and finally, hello, and the light of God's kindness shines brighter than ever.